All right, I think we're live, Eric. Um, Hello, everybody. Um,
Hello.
to our Welcome to our episode 5 live stream. The Grease Goblins once again joins me for this one, and right off the bat, let's jump right into it. Eric, what did you think about episode 5?
I really liked episode 5. I thought it did a good job of, coming after the big moment in episode 4, which is the Battle of Rook's Rest. It felt a lot like episode 2 in terms of it was kind of a reactionary, episode to the
Mm.
events of episode 1, and all that. And so I think it was handled really well. I liked a lot of the character moments. But yeah, I'd say probably it's not like my favorite episode, I would say so far, but I think it was definitely good.
Mm.
What about
Well,
yourself?
uh, I've seen it twice now, so I really set on most things by now, and I honestly think this is the worst episode of House of the Dragon so far. Not because it has that one stupid moment, or there's no dragon coming through the floor, and there's uh
Yeah.
no Kristen Cole beating up somebody. It's just a collection or like a multitude of tiny things that just piss me off. Um, I like the character moments. I like that we got more Corliss, and it's just that a lot of that just it just doesn't make sense that the small folk is pissed off at Aegon because Rhaenyra is
Yeah.
closing off the gullet, and then they're cheering for. They're not cheering. They're angry about Meleys being paraded, which I guess a killed dragon and all that is something that wouldn't go well with the small folk. But that exact dragon killed your people. So I didn't like that aspect, and I also didn't like how all of these inheritance talks between Corlys and Rhaenys amounted to, "Hey Baela, wanna be my heir?" No, and I was gone, and we have spent so much time on the inheritance being this big important thing for House Velaryon, and now it was just that, yeah, no, thank you, it should go to Blood and Salt, which is great, but there's so many tiny things that just didn't go really well with me. But overall, I just think it's not the worst. I just for the first time I think this was not a good episode. Um, like the other episodes, like episode 9 of season 1, I think that was a good episode right until the end. This one just wasn't entertaining and just wasn't, yeah, just wasn't all that. I think it was just a fairly decent episode, in my opinion.
I definitely see where you're coming there. The one thing I would say about the like inheritance thing, the only thing maybe coming at it from a different way, because that's not maybe how I viewed it. I did think it was kind of like off from Corliss, especially given the conversation he and Rhaenys had about the inheritance, and it was quite clear like they had an issue, right?
Mm.
Was it going to be Rhaena? Was it going to be Joffrey? It seemed like we were kind of going a certain way with that. The only way maybe I would like look at it maybe differently, kind of the way I maybe viewed it when I watched it, was I think Corliss is not in the best state of mind in terms of Rhaenys has died. He didn't expect to have to make this decision so quickly. It was one of the things I kind of wish we had a more of in the episode was Corliss,
Mm.
because we don't see outside of the one scene with Bela, like we don't really see him talking about anything that was going on. It's a lot of visual storytelling. Like I really liked the first, like the intro into the episode, where it's like you can tell, like it seems like every step, like every part of like Corliss is just hurting.
Yeah.
So maybe the way I interpreted it was, extreme emotional situation happens and he's just looking for any type of strength, which was Bela at that moment, trying to give him to be hand of the king. Maybe that's the way I saw it. But I will say I think this is, if you look at all the episodes so far, at least in this season,
Mm.
this is the one that didn't really have like any type of big moment. It definitely was there to like try and build plots going forward to end out the season. And so I definitely get what you're talking about in terms of like it didn't have any of those big moments, I guess, or it didn't have like huge even character moments either. I think the biggest ones are like from Jace, Corlys, some of the more secondary characters outside of not, just like the big ones like Rhaenyra, Alicent, all those.
Hmm.
But yeah, I don't know. I definitely can see why, you may not have, or you didn't like this episode in terms of this is your least favorite. So that's not great, but
Yeah, I didn't need big spectacular moments or anything like that. It's just that, you can get away with an episode like that when you have 22 episodes, or I don't know, even 10 episodes. You can get
yeah,
away with something like that. But I don't even like the setup because it looks like the riots will happen because the people don't have food. The reason the people don't have food is Rhaenyra, not Aegon, not the others. And I think that just, if that happens, it's just gonna piss me off so bad because that just doesn't make sense. And it's the same thing with Meleys being paraded and then being angry. I keep repeating myself here, but it's just something that I can't really wrap my head around. And yeah, what I did like was the setup of Alice Rivers, because I think she's gonna basically, because they revealed that she's fucking with Damon's head. We all knew that, but it's revealed because she knew about Damon's mother and how that's a point of an absolute like trauma that he has. But I like the setup that she really cares about the small folk, and it kind of confirms
yep.
a theory that I always had, was that Alice was setting up Damon versus Aemond, you know, taking out the two
Agreed.
biggest threats of this war, and I like that at least.
I did like a lot of that. Like we got a good amount of like focusing on the small folk and how they get, impacted by war and some of the actions Damon takes, towards the Brackens and things like that. I definitely did like that. I liked, some of the development we're getting for like, for instance, just more on, Hugh was interesting in this episode. Seeing in a situation where, you're not being paid, you're struggling, all this stuff, leads to desperate times. I do wanted to touch on your point because I think that's a big one for you is just the whole King's Landing mood around it. I do think that's a very conflicting like point because when you look at it in terms of they should be blaming Rhaenyra, right?
Yeah.
One thing that if you want to think about, and maybe this is why it wasn't such a big issue for me, maybe was if you think about like Clash of Kings, it's kind of a similar setup to Dance of the Dragons, and you have a siege of the big castle. How do people react? I will say, if you think about a Clash of Kings, it kind of goes the same way. Like people start rioting against the Lannisters
Mm.
and all this, and it's it's not exactly their fault that food's not coming into. They're being blockaded by
Mm.
Renly and stuff. So there's similarities. I will say I think it's more like obviously blatant in House of the Dragon that it's like it should be Rhaenyra's fault. Like that you can literally see their ships; they're blockading you.
Yeah.
So maybe it's just
Even have two banners now, so you know whose
yeah.
side it is.
I feel like if I was a common person, I would just be pissed off at everybody
Yeah.
personally. But I don't know. It is interesting that they're kind of saying that. Oh yeah, no, everybody just kind of turning Aegon, not Rhaenyra. I feel like it should just be a general population doesn't like anyone at this point.
Mm. Yeah. So you mentioned this privately. Let's talk about Damon having sex with Alyssa.
Yeah, I was just like kind of confused at some parts because I think I was like, so at the end, like it shows like basically Alyssa because she dies in childbirth trying to have Aegon. I was very confused as to like what they were I get the point of like Damon has this idea where he always wants to have power over the situation, things like that, and that's kind of I guess what they were kind of going for. I want to hear your thoughts of what they were trying to go for because I feel like I was
Mm.
missing something in the scene.
I think it goes. It's just another. It's something that Damon is insecure about, and Alice keeps sending it to him. To what end? To what this ultimately will bring is, I think, that towards the end of the season, Damon will get the army for Rhaenyra, and he's gonna chill with all that king
Yeah.
stuff, wanting to be king. But I think this was something that he's very insecure about, being uh not being Viserys and not being the favorite child. That's something that still haunts him, and that's why it's coming back to bite him in Harrenhal. And I think Harrenhal is all about the past, right? I think that's something that'll come for Aemon. That's something that'll come for Kristen Cole. We talked about this, and I think, yeah, it was definitely weird.
See, I get that, but I feel like it's weird because Damon would have barely even known his mother. Like Alyssa dies very early in his life.
Mm,
So I just find it's like I get the point of like, okay, well, he'd be insecure because he didn't know his mother. He didn't have a mother
mm,
figure, more or less. I just find it very weird in terms of the execution, I guess.
mm.
But that was the one thing that kind of stuck out to me in terms of the episode. I think you brought up some great points that I didn't even really think about during watching the episode. But I'd love to hear what chat thinks, because
Yeah,
this is one of those
yeah.
episodes where I don't have like the strongest opinion. I feel like every episode I've had a strong opinion. This episode I'm kind of like came out of it like it was good, but it wasn't like anything crazy. But I don't know.
Yeah. Do we have any questions? Welcome, Matt. Welcome, Mohammed. Welcome, Ghost T. What's up? The usuals. Metal Mass asks, was that Emma or his mother? It was definitely his mother. That was Alyssa Targaryen.
Also,
Um,
hi Muhammad.
yeah. Robbie A says the storytelling is just meh. Game of Thrones barely had any action, but the storytelling and dialogue was so good. We might have been too harsh with D&D. They were so good at adapting the source material. Yeah, they really weren't. Sorry. They abandoned the books. The reason why Game of Thrones was such a mess towards the end was because they just abandoned the books and didn't expand on what was written. They just abandoned it. It's not because there was no source material. He brings up an interesting point, the dialogue. I think the dialogue in this episode is good. It's just the content of it that doesn't make sense. The dialogue was written by Ty Mikkel, who is a writer's assistant to George R. R. Martin's books. So I think that's something that I really liked about this episode is the dialogue, because it really felt like
Yeah.
the typical Song of Ice and Fire talk. Um, so yeah. What else do we have?
I want to just go on the D&D point by Robbie.
Mm,
I think D&D were good at adapting when they cared. They
mm,
stopped caring and they rushed out the product. That was part of the problem. When they weren't big names and they were still trying to make a name for themselves and they actually had it seems like some passion behind the project. Yeah, they did a good job. Was it easier to do, Game of Thrones than it is House of the Dragon? Most definitely.
yeah.
So,
There's no
yeah.
dialogue in this, or so little dialogue in Fire and Blood that you can adapt.
Yep.
It's just like it's lines. For some of these characters, it's just random lines, and you have to expand on everything to make it even barely entertaining. So I don't get the comparisons between Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon and just in general David and Dan. Like David and Dan, like if you would give the source material that David and Dan had to Ryan Condal, it would be indefinitely better, and we would have gotten the Ironborn, we would have gotten Young Griff, and we would have gotten an actual good Dorn. There are things that I definitely don't like about the some of the bigger moments they adapted, but we would have gotten a full blown dragon battle series if David and Dan would have done House of the Dragon. They fought to even get to the point where they were in season one. They fought to get to tell that story, to get to do the setup, and yeah, I just don't agree personally. But it's right. We can disagree.
Yeah.
Robbie, all good.
Also, just for the chat, I know people seem confused by this. For people coming into the chat, it was definitely Alyssa. It was not Emma.
Yeah, that was definitely his mother. How was Jesus VS? How was Damon hoping that the Brackens responded after letting the Black Ones rampage? Yeah, he hoped that they would just yield, you know? He wanted to break them. But it definitely backfired. So I'm interested to see how he gets that army. Because I have the feeling that, yeah, we know that Rhaenyra, there's the shot of Cyrax arriving in Harrenhal from the trailers. We know that Rhaenyra will go there. I hope that he gets his army. And I hope, you know, I hope it's not something like Rhaenyra flies there and rallies the troops or whatever. Because I think that is something that having Daemon go from wanting to be king and very ambitious to raising that army for Rhaenyra and actually fighting for her would be so much cooler than just Rhaenyra and hopping on Cyrex and changing their minds.
I honestly think it would destroy Damon's whole arc of the season.
Yeah.
Like, it seems like we're building towards him either, changing as an individual, understanding, okay, what is going to work in terms of leading people. You can't just keep doing this stuff like they talked about in the episode, like with Alice Rivers. Like, what are how are you going to lead this whole army that hates you? Like, eventually the people are going to become desperate enough where they're not going to do it. Like, they're going to lash out. It's a little bit of foreshadowing to some events that are going to happen in the future, but I won't spoil. But yeah, I really hope we don't see like Rhaenyra just come bail out the Daemon arc. That just doesn't seem earned.
Yeah, that's one of the worries that I have, that's why I just didn't like this episode. It's like there is a lot of setup, but there's a lot of setup that really has me worried for the course the show will take. Yeah, lots of Daemon versus Aemon setup too. Alice,
Yep.
Daemon name drops him when he's talking to Alice, and that's something that I like. I hope that they really focus on that aspect of Alice and Aemon, how she's setting everything up basically. I like that turn. I like that.
Agreed.
I hope that they really focus on that once Aemon is there. What else do we have? Yeah, people are really really split on this episode.
I know. I think
few people talking about how it's their favorite, and Matthew says it's his least favorite. To me, I gotta repeat myself here. To me, it's the worst episode of House of the Dragon. Not because again they had that one bad moment, just because it wasn't really entertaining, and I didn't need battles or fights or anything like that. Episode 2 is my favorite, but yeah, I think it was just barely decent, to me, at least.
Yeah, like I can tell, like, just because I feel like me and you have been pretty much on the same page. This is like, to me, I don't think it was. I think it's just the way I look at the episodes. Like, for me, it's hard because if you look at episode like 3, for instance, I would have said episode 3 all the way up until you get to the Alice and Rhaenyra thing at the end is like better than episode 5. But I think for me, because that left such a bad taste in my mouth, that I think I remember that episode for being worse than this one. But I don't know. I just think this one was just very. It didn't do any, like you said. It's for you. It's like a lot of the little things here and there. It's one of the weird things because it's one of the things that I think we always talk about with House of the Dragon is it usually does pretty good on all the little things. It's usually the big things where they struggle.
Which has me worried because there was a lot to like. Again, I like the way the dialogue, how these people talk. I think that really felt some of Ice and Fire-ish, but yeah, I'm just looking at my notes because there's not even that much to talk about. I mean, the phrase are back. I like the characterization, shows that it goes way back between the Tullys and the Freys, and they are greedy. I like how that was done. Jace finally gets something to do. I think it's set up, and I feel pretty confident about my prediction on where this will end now. this season. I
Yeah.
think it definitely looks like we are gonna get Lannisters versus Starks in as like a as like an actual battle that we will see the fish feed. And I think that Cregan Stark is gonna show up instead of Roddy the Ruin. So yeah, that was set up for that. Yeah, what did you think about the phrase?
I like that. It was some of my favorite parts of the episode. I loved seeing the twins again. I liked feeling that. It felt so much like Rob going there. Like just even
Hmm.
all the dialogue, everything just felt very season one Game of Thronesy. I also just really like Jace. I really want him to have more screen time, and I'm glad he got a sizable increase of screen time in this episode.
Hmm.
He's kind of been on the back burner for I'd say like the last two episodes, especially because he's one of my favorite characters. And
Yeah.
so in this part, he takes kind of a major role in terms of going towards the Dragon Seed plot, in terms of actually getting an army for Rhaenyra. I like that, he's kind of trying to act, he's, not Daenerys, Rhaenyra and him kind of have the same issue where it's like, that neither one wants the other in danger, but, somebody has to act. So I liked that. Pretty much how all that was done. Ricky, I got a question for you though.
Hmm.
So what was, we've talked a lot about some of the things you didn't like in the episode. What would you
Hmm.
say is your favorite scene of the episode? Or favorite moment, I guess.
I think that has to be the conversation between Damon and Alice. You know how she gets away with things other people don't, and she basically reveals to him that she is fucking with his mind. At the end there, before Simon Strong comes in. So I think that's something that I just look forward to. How that will resolve, and I think that setup that is good.
I think that's a good pick.
Yeah. What about you?
I think mine is it's probably tied. I like the Jace and the phrase. Thought that was good. I did really like the Bela Corliss conversation.
Hmm.
I liked the way Corliss seems just completely broken over Rhaenys and Bela having to be the one to pick him up, try to convince him to become Hand of the King, and Corliss is still kind of angry even at Rhaenyra because how much has House Valerian given to her cause, and everything that's come with that. But yeah, I'd say those are probably my two favorites that I can remember. I think those are probably my favorites.
What I also liked was Aemond in this episode. Um, Again, I have to see where it goes after that big change last week.
Yep.
But I think they they decided to go that route, and I like the performance a lot, and I wish that we would have gotten more with him and Helena. I would have loved to see more of that after just
Yeah.
because at some point, and that's another thing. I'm sorry for bitching all the time, but that's another thing. At some point, they have to realize that what Helena says is supernatural, and that you gotta like it. How does she know?
Agreed.
From
Like
Eamon's POV, at some point, and I wish we would have gotten this after Blood and Cheese, where Aegon confronts her and asks her how she knew about it or something like that. I like the characterization of Helena. I think it's better than what we got in the books. But at some point, someone has to realize and ask her, or just have a conversation about her prophecies. So that's another thing. Also, I think Malor is definitely cut now. That's safe to say. I mean,
yeah,
but we
if
did
Aemond is
get
the heir or the
yeah.
guy coming next, that pretty much confirms it. Unless they're
Mm,
just saying the left thing, leaving it unspoken. That oh yeah, he's just too young. So we can't put him on the throne
yeah.
in wartime unless they're saying something like that. But it made it seem like it was Aemond.
But we did get Rickard Thorne in this episode. He was walking into uh where Aegon lay into Aegon's room with her. And it's always important when the Kingsguard don't wear helmets. That's
Always.
always a oh, get used to the actor kind of thing that that these shows do. Yeah, Aegon looked phenomenal. That not really phenomenal, but it's good to see that this is very much like I've read it, like it was in a book.
Yeah, I'm surprised we even got that much detail into his condition. I didn't think they were going to show it to us that quickly, but boy, was not ready. Was not ready.
Yeah. Matthew Stewart says, I think the showrunners have mentioned that someone has picked up on Helena's premonitions. I hope so. Because at some point, it should be more than just ooh, Helena knows, and you have the scene where ooh, Helena knows, or ooh, Helena already predicted that. It should be more than just foreshadowing.
I will say it's kind of gotten to the point where it's like she just is there to give one-liners.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like the Aemon scene. That is one thing now that I'm like reflecting on it. It's like I kind of felt like there was something missing there. I feel like it cut too soon. It's like really, I mean, I guess Helena just came in, said a one-liner, and just walked out. I mean, it was kind of wild, but
yeah,
I don't know.
Yeah. What else do we have? Looking at my notes again, I think the characterization of Alfred Broom is great. Like the actor really pulls it off. The scene between him and Rhaenyra was a bit weird, though. You know how, like the delivery of the dialogue was a bit weird. I think where she went like, "You have to go to reason with my husband." This was quite comical. I don't know. I'm not sure if this was supposed to be.
I mean, maybe they were going for something like, there's been a lot of tension between the two characters, and so it's supposed to be like this weird unease where Rhaenyra just feels like, the best I could say would be like she just feels like there's some tension here, and she's not quite sure how to, tell him this, I guess.
Yeah, like the conversation that you have with your boss that you don't really like.
Yeah.
But it's the other way around, of course. Yeah, and that was actually like that little glimpse we got of people riding through the woods. That was Alfred Broom. I didn't catch that on my first watch. Oh yeah, Matthew just mentioned it. Okay, they showed just a random shot of riders in the forest. Was that Sir Alfred? Yeah, that was, because it was a montage basically of, Rhaenyra's people, because it cuts to Corlys as well. So this was about Rhaenyra clearing things up and getting the right people at her side. Yeah, it's just I guess my biggest my biggest problem with this episode is just that they chose to dedicate a full season to Rhaenyra finally being okay to go at war. That was very much felt in this episode as well. It's just frustrating to see. It's not really all that entertaining, because we know that it will change. We know that probably in episode 8 they're gonna have a big breakup scene between her and Alicent, and Alicent suing for peace, and whereas Rhaenyra is not gonna go that route now, and she's fully committed, but it just drags on now. It even limits the dialogue that you can have, because you always have to be cautious, and I feel like I'm just complaining the entire time, but I'm sorry, I really don't. I really didn't like this episode.
You're hitting like my number one criticism of this episode, or not this episode, the whole season really. Is, and Rhaenyra literally says this in the episode where it's like, they're talking about Visenya, and I'm like, man, I wish we had some Visenya around here, please, dear God. Like, I made the comparison. I always make this comparison, is that Rhaenyra, the way I interpret Rhaenyra in Fire and Blood is she's like the perfect mix of like Cersei, Catelyn, and Visenya. She has good and bad things of like all of them. And thus far, they're going for a very, very slow burn of Rhaenyra's character. And You know,
Yep.
like this episode, you see like little glimpses of her, like, you know, maybe snapping on somebody, or like you'll see her like, you know, but it's like, man, like I feel like we should have gotten past this by now.
Yeah, yeah. We know it's coming. That is what frustrates me. We know that this is coming. I
Yeah.
just don't think it's compelling to tell the story over a full season, especially after people are dying, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, at least that's another thing that I like. At least we finally hear a bit about Corlys and what this man has actually seen and done. Because it's been 2 seasons and that guy has been all over the world. That is a great opportunity, especially for episodes like this, to really emphasize on and show us just how insanely unique this guy is, because I don't think that that's something that the casual audience really knows. You know, it's just like,
Yeah.
yeah, the guy with the ships, but no, it's like that is the
This
biggest
is the
sailor,
guy.
all like the best sailor of all time. He's been everywhere.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It felt like something that should have been in season 1.
Hmm.
Is the way I look at it. Like something like that. It's like we're like over halfway through season 2, and like that's like very, you know, generic like stuff we should have known about him. I think it's season 1,
Plus, you
but
know, now we know that all the inheritance talks amounted to nothing. You could have changed those scenes, you know, from Rhaenys and Corlys talking about the inheritance to Rhaenys and Corlys talking about their past, which I think would have added to both characters. Yeah. Also, do they keep uh, track of the bastards? Like, is that something that they do?
yeah, I was a little like interested about that as well. I thought it was a weird, like, this is the thing, right? This is why I like talking about these things with you, because you bring up things and I'm like, yeah, you know what? I didn't really think about it that way while watching the episode. That, like, how would you even keep track of that? Like,
Yeah.
what do you got, like Varys level just spying on every Targaryen and who he sleeps with? And oh wait, does she get pregnant? Does that kid maybe is that some Targaryens? Like, it did feel a little weird, like, to kind of change that from the book, where
Hmm.
it's just like, hey, you know, if you dragon, you know, you'll get this and this and this. You know, it kind of speeds along the process. You don't got to go through hundreds of scrolls, but I don't know. It's the way they decided to do it, I
I
guess.
guess it's a thing now. You know, no more fake claimants in the future, I guess. Because, you know, you have the
Yes,
texts, you have everything, you know that this guy is talking shit.
man. Whoever those guys were that were keeping track of that, where were they during Robert's Rebellion? That's all I gotta say. That they would have been there at the
Mushroom.
Tower of Joy.
Yeah. Yeah, just gotta wait. They're probably gonna mix this in with the Song of Ice and Fire prophecy.
Yes, it has to. It
Yeah,
has to.
definitely.
I think Matthew brings up an interesting question, though. What do you guys think of the plot with the handmaids and King's Landing? Obviously, they're gonna fuck with the food stores.
I think, and that is what worries me, or annoyed me about the small folk being pissed about the food, is that they probably are setting this up as, oh, Rhaenyra gives you food, when in reality she's the one who blocks them off from having food.
Yeah.
Now she's probably gonna give them food, and it's like, yeah, thank you. Thank you for fucking with our food and now giving us food. And
They're
that's how they're
basically
all
just
gonna be
selling them the
angry.
food they should
Ooh.
have already had.
Yeah, it's.
Uh,
Oh, there we have
um,
our answer. As Astro Mostra says, bastards were many times warded and usually recorded. Shakespeare's King Lear has a whole allegation about bastardy. Okay. So it's a Shakespearean interpretation, I guess.
I get you. I get you. I
Hmm.
still don't know how you'd keep track of that. Like think about that. Like, if you're, let's just say you're some random Targaryen, okay, and
Hmm.
you go, you know, you're riding your dragon, you go over to the Vale, or you go over to like the Stormlands, and you sleep with a woman. Like, how would you even keep track of that? Like,
Oh, you have them
maybe
boasting about it.
maybe, but how do you
I
know
made
if
the
how do you know if
7.
they're true?
Did
That's
you
true.
know that
7.
they made the 7? I don't know. It's not a huge issue that I have. Don't get me wrong. It's just like these little moments just
It's a little
added
thing.
up in this episode. What else do we have? What did I write down? Yeah, the scene between Damon and the Bracken, uh, that Bracken man, was very well done. I think. Just the balls on this guy, really. You know, to
Yeah,
refuse Damon when he's there with Caraxes. That was pretty cool. That was pretty
I did
cool.
enjoy it. He had some balls.
Definitely.
That's all I'll say.
Yeah. Um.
Something I
Like.
continue to like, though, before you go on, I will say, I do like that they're adding nuance to the Bracken and Blackwood conflict.
Mm,
My one thing where I've always said is like, it always seems like the Brackens are the bad guys.
mm.
I like that there's some nuance in House of the Dragon. That it's not, like everybody is being just a shit. Like it's not just, oh, the Blackwoods are the good guys, type situation.
Yeah, Willem Blackwood was very much ready to take them hostage and commit some war crimes. That was, yeah, that's something that I like too. Is that little things like that matter, and there's a lot of emphasis on that. You know,
Yeah,
it's already more than I think we 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 like prior to this that I think we would have gotten. It adds to it. I'm just really interested to see how they come to Damon's side, because we also have that big trailer, the big scene in the trailer where he has that army, like hundreds of tents there. So I'm
agreed.
interested to see how we get to that point.
Like I wasn't expecting them to draw this plot out longer. I thought it was gonna like probably the Bracken and Blackwood stuff was gonna be resolved this episode. So
Hmm.
I am interested to see what they do with it.
Hmm.
Oh, you know what? A scene we haven't talked about, Ricky. We
Hmm.
haven't talked about. What are your thoughts on the scene in the Vale with Reyna?
Oh yeah, great actress. Oh my god, really good actress. The one who plays uh Jane Aaron. Really good.
Yeah,
Really good
I thought
actress.
it was great.
Um also finally more Reina. I like when the smaller roles, the side characters get more when they get more focus. Yeah, pretty good. I'm interested to see where this goes as well, because we have some interesting leaks. And we had a very interesting blog post by George that will fit right into that leak.
Yep,
I'm interested to see where it goes. But George contradicted himself by saying that the dragons never roam around, because Drogon very much does it and
of
Dance with
course.
Dragons. And I think was it Silverwing who had its lair had his lair in the Vale as well. I'm not sure, but he
I'm not
definitely
sure on that one.
yeah, he definitely contradicted himself. I just think he's a bit grumpy, and I would be grumpy too if Nettles, was cut. I think he once mentioned that that she's one of his favorite characters, very unique, very out of the norm. So
Agreed.
I think that's what that was all about.
I mean, you just got to think about it from this point of view. Like, us as fans, even us as fans, we might get upset at changes that they make, and whatever, right? Like Blood and Cheese, like we talked about a lot
Mm,
in our episode 1, where we thought it could have been better. It was still fine, it still worked, but it could have been way better. And so you take that then, and then you look at the person that created this world. He created that story.
mm,
Of course, he's going to want to see his work adapted or whatever. And so he's going to be the biggest. He will always probably be the biggest critic of House of the Dragon,
mm.
because it's his baby, right? Like they're taking his work and putting it to a television show.
What I'll say about that is, though, that people mistake it for him openly hating on House of the Dragon, when all he does is just giving a very nuanced critique, which
Oh,
he
I agree.
hasn't done for Game of Thrones, by the way. Like, he just stopped talking about it altogether, and now he's praising the show while also talking about things that he seemed to not like. And the fact that George goes into that much detail about the heraldry is very interesting, because it kind of makes you think about all these changes that were made to characters from his main book series and how he might have felt about that. If two more
Yeah,
legs piss you off that much. And he always talked about, like, the only things that he criticized on Game of Thrones were the tourney, the Hans tourney in season 1, the hunt, and I think Littlefinger early on. That was all he ever talked about. He never talked about the big things. And yeah, it's interesting that he talks about House of the Dragon more now.
I mean, he's passionate about it. You're not going
Definitely.
to talk about something if you're not passionate about it. Like in Game of Thrones, once it, that ship sailed where it wasn't, it wasn't even Game of Thrones anymore, more or less. He doesn't care about it, right? He's not going to care. Like,
I think
it's not his story anymore.
I think that's the only route. If you don't like, if it's like, for me personally, I had a fan page back in the day, during the days of Game of Thrones. And after season 6, I just stopped talking about the show. I just mainly focused on the books. And if I were to hate House of the Dragon, I wouldn't make House of the Dragon content anymore. Like, I think many people won't know this, but I used to do Star Wars videos. And I
Oh boy, I was
watched
about to take us there.
I watched Kenobi, and I was like, all right, it's not for me anymore. I'm not gonna waste my time creating content about it, writing scripts and editing and stuff. It's like, so yeah, it is interesting that he's talking more about it, because I think it is.
Oh my god, you got to address that, Ricky. That just came through chat.
I would say something obvious that the Chronicle is its own gossip, its own political way memory is recorded and fictionalized. Is there a super chat?
Yeah.
That never happened. Thank you. Cool. Thank you. I I don't know how that looks, because I'm pretty new to live streaming. Thanks, man. Okay, again, let me read that again, because I was shocked. I guess I would say something obvious that the Chronicle is its own gossip, its own political way memories recorded and fictionalized, where are seeing the events, not the story told. Yeah, I mean, that's fair. It probably is a Shakespearean interpretation, I guess, because there's a lot of Shakespearean things about the way these people talk. I think it's very similar to old Victorian English. I'm in the middle of rehearsing for Romeo and Juliet, so I really appreciate the dialogue on this episode, and what say you and all those kind of sayings. Like, I think it's dope. And that's something that House of the Dragon does better than Game of Thrones, by the way. It's the way people talk, look, and dress, and everything. So yeah.
I will say, just to, before we got into the super chat, again, I would say Star Wars is a perfect example. Like, think about how many creators don't make Star Wars content anymore, or they just don't care anymore, right? There's a certain point where you're still passionate about something, and then once it's it's proven itself as not a good product anymore, then you don't care. You're not going to talk about it anymore. And
Which
I think
is why I
people
despise all those channels that just, oh my god, like, how miserable do you have to be to like even create that content? Like, I'm looking at all the thumbnails, I'm just shaking my head. Like, I won't watch that. I won't watch you hating something so much. It's not nuanced anymore, and I think that is something that always comes up with these shows too now. Because House of the Dragon, for example, I think the discourse is at its absolute lowest right now.
Oh yeah, it's horrible.
Like, it's crazy. I got so much flack, like never before. People calling me a shill, calling me a hater, because somehow my views are influenced by me seeing the episodes early. I stopped talking about seeing the episodes early. I still am seeing them early. I don't want to engage with that anymore. I don't want to hop on Twitter and have a conversation about stuff that it's really not, like, it's always heated. It's not like it's not like we're not having good discussions, and we're talking like we would never talk to each other's faces. It's not like you wouldn't come at me and hate me for my opinion. Like, you would probably counter argue and just offer your own opinion and it's back and forth, and it's called Discourse, and it's cool.
Yeah. I mean, like
Now,
this stream right now, like we don't have exact the same thoughts on things. Like
yeah.
you've talked about that. Like this is your least favorite episode. I'm not that far. I'd say it's just
Hmm.
kind of like a middle episode for me. But
Hmm.
yeah, I mean, I think you're totally right. I think me and you both, because we do critique this show. We don't just say it's good, right? That's it. Like I did this is one of the reasons I don't really do like reviews for the videos, and there's other reasons, but I made like a mid-season review, and people were not happy with my thoughts. Like, and this is me giving it an 8 out of 10. Like I still said, like
Yeah.
it was a good first half of the season. But then I say things I hope will improve and all that stuff. But it is very not rewarding when you put things into the world and people just seem to think, oh yeah, you hate it. That's why you're critiquing you. You hate it.
Yeah. Yeah. There's we just lost the nuance. And I made a big mistake in becoming active on Twitter.
Yep.
That place is
That was your
just
first problem.
crazy. Yeah, that was a big problem.
I only go on Twitter to troll. You know this.
Yeah, I just meme, like that's all I do really, and I talked about the episodes a bit, and now I don't know. Oh boy, I opened up a portal. Yeah, it is what it is. Do we have more questions from the chat? Jesus
some
V.
people are talking about go ahead.
Jesus V asks, did you guys have any empathy for Aegon when he cries out "mummy" to Alicent as she walks away? I guess so. Yeah, I think House of the Dragon did a pretty good job on showing his good side this season, and he is literally cooked. He's severely burned, has broken bones. He's there, just in agony, and the fact that he's even there, this is scary. It has to be scary laying there, not knowing where anything goes. What about you? Did you have empathy for him?
I definitely have empathy for him. I think he's literally just physically, emotionally, mentally just broken. I mean, yes, he's not the best dude. We saw that in season 1. But despite that, the things he's gone through, the trauma he's probably had from the parents he's had, I do feel the kind of bad for him. I mean, the dude was literally like, we saw what he looked like. It's pretty bad. But I do want to take that discussion because I also saw some people talking about the scene with the small council where Aemond is basically made to rule more or less. And I will say, I think Olivia Cook's acting in that scene was fantastic. She continues to be really good in the role of Alicent.
Yeah, the performances are out of this world in this show. It's crazy. It's really amazing. Like I don't think we have a single actor on the show that doesn't work act his ass out.
Agreed.
That's something that's always consistent. Jesus V says, I think book readers will always be more critical of anything being created from the source material. Yeah, obviously. I think I just talked to a few of my friends, and one of them brought up how, because he watches my videos. Shout out to Aaron, by the way. Looking forward to play this December and November. They're more open to it. And I think if you're not aware of the characterization in the books, you're just more welcoming and more, you appreciate it more.
Yeah, it's the first time you're seeing it.
Yeah. And
it's like, go ahead, finish off, and then I'll go.
Things like Aemond going at Aegon, you won't care about that if you're a show-only watcher. And Blood and Cheese probably work pretty damn well for you if you're not aware of the books. It's stuff like that where obviously we look at everything very critical. Very small things that we get hung up with. Like George with the heraldry, for example. Like, who cares about that if you're not
Agreed.
a big fan of the books?
I mean, I have this personally. Like, I have two of my friends who they have read like the main series. They haven't read Fire and Blood, so they don't know the dance. And like exactly what you said. Like they thought Fire and Blood was good and all this stuff. And I tried to explain it the best way possible. It was like I basically told them like, say you because they knew they've read the book and they've also watched show that you knew what the Red Wedding was, and then when it came to the show, the Red Wedding was maybe not as good as it could have been. Like maybe it was still good, but there were things in the book and elements that worked better for you than and I think it's like for me personally, I think it's weird because especially with the Song of Ice and Fire, I came into the Game of Thrones characters through Game of Thrones. And so this is for me personally, it's the first time where it's like, I love Rhaenyra, I love Daemon, I love all these characters. And so it's hard for me as a viewer because I have an image of what they are and what I believe they are in the book. And so sometimes, you want certain thing to happen and sometimes they go a different way with it. And,
I think you just come off as a major hater to these guys who haven't read the stuff. When in reality, I really like House of the Dragon, and that is why I am so critical with it. And this goes in line with the question that Jesus V just asked. Ricky, how critical will you be of A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms? Scale of 1 to 10. 150. I'm sorry for the person I will become when Duncan Egg airs. Like House of the Dragon's cool. It's a cool story. It has really good aspects. But Duncan Egg is very dear to my heart. That is something that I always wanted to see was an adaptation of Duncan Egg on screen. They have to be very, very careful. But I'm trusting them. I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going into it looking for stuff that I can bitch about. I just can't wait, and it's such a blessing to have this show. These beautiful short stories mean so much to me. Yeah, I can't wait for Duncan Egg. House of the Dragon's cool. Duncan Egg is just on a whole nother level for me personally. Like that is something that, like if House of the Dragon and Duncan Egg were running at the same time, I'm not even sure if I would talk about House of the Dragon that much. It's just that dear to me.
I love it because I'm the complete opposite. I've always been dance. I've always been Fire and Blood. But maybe that's because I read Duncan Egg last. I don't know.
Yeah,
I still love Duncan Egg. Duncan Egg's beautifully written as well. Everything is
word for
great,
word.
but
I think it's the best thing that George has ever written in the world of A Song of Ice and Fire. Just very beautiful. Dunk is is an amazing character, and the fact that this story that we've seen time and time again, Star Wars just did it with Mandalorian. This companion thing, wandering about. That it still feels so unique. It's just incredible, and just showcases how capable George is of delivering beautiful stories. Yeah,
in terms
Matthew.
of character work, George will always be the top.
Oh yeah,
he knows how to write characters.
100%. Yeah, just so fascinating. Matthew, I agree. Duncan Egg is also my favorite piece of George R. R. Martin universe. So yeah, they better get it right, but I trust him on this. I definitely do. I think the guy who plays Dunk looks perfect for the role. Like that's straight out of the short stories. Yep. I'm gonna be. It's interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see where it goes in terms of how far they will tell this tale, how many other tales they will. But I'm sorry. Yeah, did you see the chat as well?
Oh, I did.
Yeah, I was in the middle of my sentence, just completely forgot what I wanted to say.
That's my mod Dakota. He likes always coming with the bangers.
My sweet summer child, yeah. Robbie A
also
says,
Dakota, we need Makar to be done justice.
Oh yeah. The actor who got cast for Arion Bright play him. Looks really good to play the part. Yeah, definitely, definitely. And Matthew, I agree. The fact that we see everything through the eyes of a nobody really that makes it unique. Mixed with the cruel world of A Song of Ice and Fire. But let's get back to the episode. This is a episode 5 stream. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
That I can think of? No, but we usually do this. Who would you say is your standout performance of the episode?
Standout performance. I think it has to be Eamon's Ewan Mitchell. But
Good one.
but I also really liked Bethany Antonia's Bela. Very underappreciated characters. Bela and Reyna and Jace, and I like that we get more focus. What about you?
I'm kind of in a tie. There's like 4 that I like throw up there. I would throw up Damon, Corliss, Bela, Jace. I thought those were the ones that stood out to me.
I'm sorry, Papa Khan. Yeah, I totally agree. The show, yeah. Dunk, She-Wolves of Winterfell, season 4. It's gonna happen. Mark my words.
Smash that like button like Dunk smashed old Nan. That's right.
Yeah. So what are your overall thoughts, just to wrap this up, about the episode?
I think it's probably the most forgettable episode of the season. And I would say it's a weird episode to me because I find it like it's the most inoffensive episode for me because it doesn't like you said, we talked about them a lot in the stream. There's a lot of small things that are just like, yeah, they're kind of, they could really have problems going forward. For me, I think it was just a pretty, mid episode. Didn't do anything for me terribly wrong, but didn't do anything terribly right either. Just kind of, it's kind of there.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think what hurts this episode is the characterization of Rhaenyra's agency and just Rhaenyra in general, because you're watching people react and not act, and it's cool. Yeah. I love episode 2. I love character focused episodes. I just think I just don't really like the setup, because I think it's dangerous in some cases, and just in general, not a lot happens. And yeah, I have to go back and watch it a third time to really conclude everything, like collect my thoughts as a whole.
I mean, that's the issue though. Like, if you think about it, like, because Rhaenyra in the book, it makes, I feel like, a lot more sense as to why she's, so much into inaction, and it's like, people like Jace kind of taking over. I just think that the characters are just very distinctively different, because Rhaenyra is, in the show, much more emotionally intelligent.
Yeah.
Like, she's not as, she could be, in one moment she could be Visenya, the next moment she could be, Rhaenys. So
she's a better human being. That's fair, yeah.
And so that is going to hurt like how the actual normal story goes, because you've kind of made a new version of the character that maybe that character doesn't exactly fit how the actual story goes. And so that's something interesting that maybe might have repercussions, or maybe they're able to work around it.
I think, it's not about Rhaenyra going around and flipping and going full Ares or big spectacular moments. It's just about her hesitance. It would not make her a bad person if she were to freak out and after Rhaenys dies, or stuff like that happens. For example, we had a scene of Rob where he just in episode 10 of season 1, where he just freaks out about the news of Ned's death and how he proclaims that he's gonna kill them all. That doesn't make him a psychopath. That just makes him human, and it's another part of his persona. His persona.
One of the best scenes that D&D put into season 1.
Yeah,
that wasn't in the book.
definitely great scene. But yeah, I will see you all for my review. It's probably going to be out later today. Thank you so much once again for hopping on the stream, Eric. Looking
Of course.
forward to episodes 6 a stream on your or on your channel. Definitely subscribe to the man. Makes that peak content. And
Yes, sir.
yeah,
Thank you.
thank you guys for watching, and see you.